to my state of mind here on My Ride TV, 7:30, of course, each weeknight in Fox Providence at midnight. As I might have said to you at the beginning of the program here, we are recording this show now a day in advance, and I'll let you know when it becomes same day. But we're doing our best as can as we get back in the swing of things. And as you can see on the screen, State Representative Blake Filippi is with me. He is the minority leader, hailing from Block Island in South County, and he's been in the mix of the conversation here about the General Assembly operations, I think, in a pretty heady way. Blake, thanks for joining me. Great to have you aboard.
Happy to be here, Dan.
Do me a favor, chronicle where you have been in your ongoing, I think, legitimate pressure to try to bring the General Assembly back to bear. And I guess rather than talking about the broad strokes, which we'll get to in the next segment, let's talk about this event that happened at the event itself, and then your intervention there, which was not well received by the Speaker of the House. The Joint Committee Task Force that the General Assembly has put together, the Senate and the House, is incredibly unusual, unicameral program that was designed here for review of the governor's spending on COVID-19, but which really has no force of law. Tell me what your evaluation of the entity is, number one. And then number two, tell the story of how you just waved your hand and said, can I have some input? And it was not well received.
Sure. So it's not an entity. It's not formed under law. It's at best an informal gathering of legislators in a room. The Speaker can, under our rules, create a committee. And if he creates a committee, I'm on it. And so the Speaker has stated multiple times, and I believe he's still stating, that this task force is exercising the General Assembly's constitutional oversight function. The only way that can happen is pursuant to our House rules, and our House rules only give the Speaker the ability to create a committee. And if he creates a committee, I'm on it. So I assume that this was a lawfully formed joint committee, a committee of the Senate and a committee of the House, and that they were meeting that night, even though it was called a task force. So I went, kept my distance, wore a mask, and asked to be recognized multiple times, and Chairman Abney wouldn't recognize me. So I went over to him in a sidebar and said, Chairman, if you don't call on me, I'm going to raise a point of order. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I believe I'm a member of this committee and I have a right to participate. And he didn't call on me, so I called a point of order.
And the point of order was simply, Mr. Chairman, now people need to understand, you've got Chairman Abney, who is on the House side, runs the Finance Committee. And, on the Senate side, we've got the Senator from East Providence, Senator Bill Connolly, who is co-chairing as well. And each of the Senate and House chairs have appointees, but there's one Republican and on each side, correct? Not you.
Correct.
Just one Republican. Anyway, you raised your hand, you tried to make a point, and I think he tersely, diplomatically, but tersely, more or less said, we've heard enough from you, right?
Yeah, because I don't think anyone wants to really have the conversation. And the conversation I think we spoke about on your radio show is what my presence and the denial of my ability to participate exposes is that in these times of crisis, our leadership establishes some informal, toothless committee rather than our House Oversight Committee, which is schooled at oversight. And I just think that's a concern. I don't know why we're not taking things seriously, especially when the General Assembly is needed most. I think we've continued to sit on the sidelines.
Yeah, the Speaker wasn't buying your approach. Suggested that you actually had violated social distance rules and had more or less been a disruptor. Now, look, one of the things that I've admired about your leadership as the minority leader here for the last year or so is that I just haven't seen, believe me, I call out lunatics. You know that. I call out lunatics all day long. Process matters to me, always has. I've never seen you out of order. I've never seen you make a suggestion that would create a circus atmosphere. And I think you've been pretty steady with your leadership. And I don't offer those accolades, very readily. So and then having witnessed and watched the video, all one could see is you just diplomatically saying, listen, may I get in here? I believe I have a role here. He more or less suggested that you put everybody at risk. You thought that was ironic in a way, right? Because, or perhaps closer to anybody than you had been, if I understand.
Yeah. So the speaker put out a press release the next day after I'd been on the radio criticizing this task force, this informal gathering, and he went all into how I wasn't social distancing, and it's just simply not true. There's some pictures of the event where you see me in the back corner. And after they put out that press release, someone sent me a picture of the speaker before the meeting, kind of just hanging out with everybody, not practicing social distancing. And, he's from Cranston that has over 600 cases of COVID-19 with community spread. Here I am from Block Island. We had one case over a month ago from someone who came from New York. No community spread.
It can appear as if it's chippy stuff, right? It can appear as if at that point, we're talking about, child play behavior, but not really.
Yeah.
It's an important thing because process is important, and having input and the oversight has a lot to do with being there. Give me 10 seconds on why you need to be there. Then we'll talk in broad strokes about the General Assembly's general response to COVID-19.
Yeah, so it's either a committee of the House, which has constitutional power to oversee the governor, or it's not. If it is a committee of the House, I'm on it. If it's not a committee of the House, this task force is just some informal group of people in a room with a camera.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk more about the broad responsibility of the General Assembly. Stay with us. Back to my state of mind here. State Representative Blake Filippi is my guest in a conversation that we recorded yesterday for this Wednesday night program. And I remind you of that because the lag time, in case all heck breaks loose, and in case Blake actually decides to get going here. I thought it was interesting midday Tuesday that I was looking at a Twitter feed from John Marion from Common Cause, and he tweeted out that there had been no progress in announcing that the Finance Committee, chaired by Marvin Abney, who we spoke about before, had not yet formally set an agenda to actually get together. We'll get to the mechanics of that in a moment. But you've been very critical of the General Assembly's overall responsibility to oversee the executive branch and the governor here. Give me your broad 30,000-foot view of where you think our elected body needs to play a role here.
Yeah, sure. So in normal times, you have the General Assembly enacting a law, the governor enforcing the law, the courts making sure that everyone follows the law, and the media, the fourth estate, keeping its eye on everybody. During this crisis, what has happened, we are operating under our military statutes where the governor is making law via executive order, enforceable with criminal penalties. The General Assembly has pretty much gone home. The courts, there's a ton of case law out there that they don't like to get involved when there's an emergency, even if something may be unlawful. And the media has pretty much been shut out. So we've had a system of government that just it's not operating the way it was designed. And sometimes when there's an emergency, I get it, that may need to happen. But when you look at our military statutes, the General Assembly is the check and balance on the governor during this emergency time. And from the beginning of the declaration of emergency, we've been saying we need to have a plan to meet in case we have to. And we haven't had the need, but I think over the past month or so, it's been clear we've needed to exercise oversight. We haven't had to undeclare the state of emergency, but certainly the public and us need answers to a lot of questions, and that's what we've been asking for.
I think there's two issues that intersect here. One is the physicality of getting together. The problem with COVID-19 is that everything goes back to how close you are to others physically. The virus itself becomes the obstacle to getting things done. I mean, duh. But there's a logistic side to getting together. Then there is a crisis management executive response to this, which, pardon me, I think has become a runaway train. Notwithstanding the governor's terrific work acutely on the health issues with the Department of Health, the knock it off syndrome, trying to slow the curve, all of that it seems like we haven't had to fill those extra hospital beds and all the spending that's gone along with that, which you want to be able to have some input on. I know, because she's done a good job that way. But there's no doubt that over the course of this time, the leadership of the General Assembly has just taken a powder on this. They've just kind of sat back, watched the executive branch move in a way that is completely untended, and a simple review that has no constitutional authority. This financial task force that we talked about in the last segment hardly meets, I think, the accountability standard that the General Assembly has to have. So talk to me about the conceptual authority the General Assembly has abdicated from, and the physical presence that you think we can figure out.
What was that last sentence? I'm sorry, Ann.
And the physicality of it, like where would you set up?
Sure.
So give me
Sure. With pleasure. So I'll start with the latter. We can easily meet. We put forward a plan to meet and take public testimony at the Dunkin' Donuts Center. You could have 124 seats per person there. It's a 12,400 seat arena. And we could take public testimony through a drive-through system, have Capitol TV set up a bunch of cameras in the parking lot. You pull off, you say your piece, it gets projected into the members who are there in the Dunkin' Donuts Center. So we figured out how to do it, put forward a plan. There's plenty of other ways it can be done, other venues, et cetera. Why it has to happen is that there's a lot of questions out there that we want answers to. There's a lot of questions the public needs answers to. And there's things that we disagree with that the governor has done. The speaker and I are on the same page that there shouldn't be fines for not wearing a mask. I take the position then, all right, let's meet. Let's pass a law saying you can't assert a fine. But there just doesn't seem to be the will to go and do something that even the speaker has said we should be doing.
Sure. I want to talk about the politics of some of this. Well, the mask thing and a couple of other things that the governor has introduced, and the repercussions of it, where the General Assembly would come in. But specifically, the politics of this thing are fascinating. That the Senate President and the Speaker have kind of geared back. Then eventually are going to have to come in one fell swoop here to try to, put Humpty Dumpty back together again on a financial basis. Governor, it's only going to enhance a syndrome that we've had, and we know it's existed, kind of elephant in the room-ish forever, and that is only a handful of people make the decisions about how this place operates. And if they don't get back to business and bring the full elected body in, that's going to be glaring. That the whole doggone state is being operated by, a handful of people this big, right?
Yeah. I mean, if it isn't glaring every year when the finance committee gets its budget, it's still hot off the printer. It's a $10 billion budget last year. No one on the finance committee has even seen it. It's still hot to the touch. And within 10 minutes, they vote it to the floor of the House. So, I mean, I think that's pretty glaring. But maybe it's going to be even more glaring because there's going to be a lot of pain in this budget. And I think representatives are going to demand a say. I think they should be demanding a say. And I think the public, frankly, should be able to comment on a proposed budget. Because what usually happens is there's months of testimony, and then the budget comes out, it's voted out of committee, and it's on the floor of the House within 1 week. But there's going to be a lot of changes to the way state government operates. I think those changes need to be telegraphed, and we need to hear from the advocates.
Back to my state of mind, final segment here with Republican State Representative Blake Filippi. Okay, any projection, by the way, as to when you think the General Assembly might actually embark on this whole situation and where you may meet? I mean, what's the background noise right now? The Finance Committee is going to get together where? In the big room in the General Assembly? And when do you think the rest of the representatives will actually be called in to do their jobs?
I don't know. I mean, it's good the House Finance Committee is meeting. I can't say the Republicans can take credit for the General Assembly getting back to work, but we're happy the Speaker's moving in the right direction. We need to be involved. We need to know what's going on. We need to ask questions, and we need answers. When do the rest of the reps come back in? I don't know. I don't think it's going to be your typical session with hundreds of bills, but maybe those hundreds of bills are going to be necessary in order for people to vote for this budget. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen.
there were some big things that were in play here prior to COVID-19 jumping up, including something you've been working on, the IGT Twin River merger. Those two entities seem like they've got a copacetic agreement, but you've raised some concerns, and certainly some finishing touches and diligence have got to be done on that. There's a series of things that need to get accomplished, but even in transition to COVID-19, for instance, the mask situation. The governor is now in a frittata with law enforcement. You've got law enforcement associations saying that we'll abide by the governor's rulings. You have the FOPs popping up now in Warwick, North Providence, and I'm sure more to come, where they say, you know what, we don't like this law. We're not going to. We don't like this order. We're not. This whole thing. The General Assembly had debated and took information from the police and crafted, legislation and voted on it, it would have a clearer impact, I think, on the community. Now, people say, well, yeah, Dan, in a perfect world, you can do that, but right now it's COVID-19 and they can't get together. That is the catch-22 that I think you can penetrate when you just decide to put, find a venue and take up a weekly issue. This is general budget stuff. This is COVID-19 stuff. Yes? No?
Agree completely. I mean, I think it's good to see police forces actually, recognizing that they took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. And I think there's questions out there as to whether the governor has the authority to issue these executive orders, which force the people to affirmatively act. I don't know that she does. She's essentially legislating by executive order. That's a legislative power reserved to the General Assembly. In times of crisis, I think she needs the ability to have a pen to do things. How long are we going to be in this state of emergency? I don't know that it was envisioned when things, I don't want to say are safe, but this isn't Ebola. We're not being invaded by a foreign army. Our General Assembly has the capability to meet. And I think when we have the capability to meet, I think that the ability of the governor to make law via executive order dramatically wanes. It has to wane.
If there was something that you wanted to initiate right now at the General Assembly level, what would it be? Just based on experiencing the whole COVID situation, where we are, it's just something where you're like itching to get back into business to say, hey, we got to make a decision on X. What would it be?
I think the mask is clear. It's a personal choice issue. I don't think people should be fined. I think we need to look at how to help restaurants. Many restaurants, they're limited in their service area. Even if they own a large lot, their towns have limited them. They've applied to only serve alcohol within a very limited area, alcohol and food. I think the General Assembly may have to look at expanding that area to all of the lot that restaurant is located on, because there could be a restaurant with a significant outside area that isn't part of their designated service area by a town, and they might not be able to even expand to do outside seating there. That's something we have to look at. And frankly, back to the IGT Twin River issue. We've asked that our Christian Capital Advisor, our advisor from Maine, we paid $160,000 to advise the General Assembly. We have paid him already to come down to Rhode Island and testify in front of House Finance Committee about this proposed deal. We've already given him the money. I think he has to come down and talk to us and advise the House Finance Committee on some very serious issues with this proposed deal before it's ever brought to the floor or the Finance Committee, before the deal is ever brought to the Finance Committee. It would be an absolute an absolute degradation of duty to have a IGT Twin River bill come before us before hearing from the advisor we've already paid a bunch of money to.
And I only have a minute here or so, but look, prior to COVID, we had a touchy situation going on anyway with this, with your legal battle on the on legislative services, establishing what the speaker can unilaterally decide, which has been a cultural allowance at the General Assembly forever. You really upended him in terms of this whole controversy over his audit order of the convention center, which he rescinded. He's now clearly under investigation at a grand jury, which is suspended with COVID-19. So, I mean, there are a lot of dangling parts right now at the General Assembly. I only have, half a minute or so here, Blake, but, tell me what you think the atmosphere will be when and if you guys actually form again.
Well, I think a lot of those issues we're going to have to put on the sideline in terms of our brain. If there's a legal process out there, that's for the Attorney General. It's not for us. With my JCLS lawsuit, that is in the courts. It's not for the members. Our most important responsibility right now is to craft a budget and enact limited laws that enable people who have been devastated by this COVID-19 crisis to get by. In our workforce right now, we have more unemployed people than employed people. It is an absolute emergency, and that is what the General Assembly's responsibility is, to look at and try and mitigate.
All right, listen, appreciate your time. Stay safe, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you, everybody.
Do it for our State of Mind this evening. We'll be back tomorrow with more provocative conversation, probably COVID-19 centered, because I think it's going to be a while. Thanks so much for tuning in. You have a great night. Talk to you tomorrow. And on WPRO, weekdays 3 till 6. Don't forget that.